Thank you for joining RunSafe Security and Critical Software for our discussion around navigating FDA and EU medical device compliance and regulations. For those who have just joined, we welcome you and thank you for joining us. Before we dive into our topic, we will be having everyone's microphone on mute and video off. If you do have any questions during this presentation, please feel free to use the chat or QA function, and we will address them at the end of the session. And today, during our conversation, I will be joined by Afonso Neto from Critical Software and Doug Britton from RunSafe Security. We will be exploring the pressing issue in healthcare around the increasing cybersecurity vulnerabilities associated with modern medical devices. As the connectivity expands from MRI machines to infusion pumps, obviously the cyber attack heightens. Recent FDA reports highlight a significant rise in the vulnerabilities, emphasizing the urgent need for robust security measures. Afonso and Doug, I would like for you to kick off the webinar and introduce yourselves, and we will dive into the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. Well, I'm working in cybersecurity since a long time. Like 20 years ago, I started this journey. I did everything from security management, threat modeling, and I even was a teacher for a brief time. Since 2 years ago, more or less, I started focusing on medical devices, and turns out that this area, it's not that it surprised me, but it's really motivating because we're talking about the safety of people, and anyone can relate with this area. If you're going to a hospital, you're using a medical device, you just believe it will work and nothing bad will happen. And even your information will be there. You want this information to be secure. So I was really drawn to it, and since this time, I'm fascinated by this area.
Great, Doug.
Hey, I'm Doug Britton, one of RunSafe's founders, and I've been cybering for about 18 years now. And my background is in computer science, and I was in military intelligence and the human side of things, and got excited about cyber and how to help defend against nation state style attacks and deeply resourced, deeply capable, and highly patient attackers that are limited only by their vision and audacity. And the opportunity to be able to create scalable technology that deprives attackers of entire classes of weapons is something that's I'm really excited about. I'm really passionate about. So I'm excited to get to work with Afonso and others to apply that capability in the medical device space. So thanks.
Great. Thanks for joining, both of you. So we're going to dive into the discussion. First, we want to start off with just understanding the FDA and EU medical device cybersecurity requirements. So can you explain how have recent guidelines for both of these changed the landscape of medical device cybersecurity from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I can tackle this question. Basically, it's something that arose naturally from the evolution of technology. This should be intuitive for everyone, that as new technology is appearing, everyone is trying to apply this technology on all fields which can harvest some good benefits from it. If you take any area like I don't know, entertainment. I mean, if you compare televisions we have today with televisions what they did 20 years ago, they are entire computers now. They do everything, they connect everywhere. And this technology actually means that we are dealing with complex computers. Now, if we harvest this technology to medical devices, we can do a lot of things, and that's actually great. But as long as we are dealing with complex machines and computers, these complexities allows to arise the possibilities of attacks. And for anyone, and here's a difference from the people that are more on the field of technology and people which are not from technology background, we easily see these functions that they can be used maliciously, basically. Either they can malfunction, but this is something that we naturally try to test and avoid. I mean, a device should function as promised. But in addition to that, we can look at these and see that they can be manipulated to do things that they shouldn't do. And this is where the cybersecurity arises, the cybersecurity threats and issues arise. Here in Critical, we are dealing with that since a long time ago. I mean, we work on all and major critical fields like airspace, railway, automotive. And recently in the few years with the, I mean, not specifically regarding cybersecurity, but the complexity of the medical device area, it made complete sense that we started looking at the medical devices as another critical kind of critical system, because as these devices are being used, if they fail, and failure can be something that just occurs, so we must make sure these failures, random failures or expected failures, don't occur. But for malicious failures shouldn't happen as well. This is the part of cybersecurity. And when it comes to the guidance and regulations, I think it's just natural that as they saw, I mean, the regulators saw that these devices were harvesting the capabilities of technology, that we need to impose to the manufacturers the responsibility of addressing the possibility of them being maliciously taken advantage of, because it's easy and it's easy to see that manufacturers, once you have a functional device that does what it should do, it is cheaper to just stay at this development level and market it. And then if something happens, we address the issues. But when we are talking about health and patients and people, the lives of people, we cannot stop there. We must do and go the next step, which is seeing, okay, in which circumstances this can fail, and not even randomly, in which circumstances we can find someone that may want to take advantage of a specific situation to cause harm to someone else. You need to require the manufacturers to consider this possibility and do whatever they need to avoid that happening in the field. And this is why the regulations are so complex, because doing that is not easy. It's a lot easier just building something, even though it has its complexities, but building something and then showing it does what you said it would do, but then showing it doesn't do what it shouldn't and cannot be maliciously exploited or even induced to cause harms to someone, that goes an additional way and takes not only expertise, but time and effort to reach this quality of a medical device. So the regulations are just requiring for the manufacturers to go this next step. They cannot, and I would say, and this is something that keeps appearing on my minds and talks. Medical devices are like televisions, are full of features and really help. The things that they can do today are excellent, but they have two main differences from regular devices that you can go to a store and buy, which may have the same kind of complexity. The two differences are basically that they should be treated not as entertainment things. I mean, they should be treated as medicine. If you look at medicine today, they have a whole lot of regulations of how things that you must be complete sure before selling some pills in the pharmacy. And because the medical devices will do something similar, maybe even can be even worse in that perspective. I think the amount of regulations requiring precautions from the manufacturers should be at the same level, basically. And I do believe this should be true for our own safety. And that leads me to the second difference, which I think is also important. The second difference is that if we are buying some medicine, usually the person that goes to the pharmacy, even if he has a prescription from a doctor, he is choosing to do that. He's accepting the doctor's prescription, going to the pharmacy, usually buying the medicine with his own money. But if you're going to a hospital and you're using, or a clinic or something like that, using a medical device, usually this medical device was not chosen by the patient. It was chosen by the clinic, by the hospital. So the damage that this device can cause on the final patient, the end receiver of the potential damage, is not the people that are deciding to buy it. And then the fact that the medical device is cheaper might even play a bigger issue here. And making a device cheaper means sometimes having a smaller development time, less people looking at it, and therefore less effort applied to cybersecurity. And I understand that the regulatory agencies are seeing that. We are seeing that happen because, well, are you taking this medical device that costs double the price of this other one just because they are saying it's cyber secure? I mean, this is a question that people that will pay for this medical device will have to justify for the people that are providing the money. So that's why the regulation is so important, because it stops being optional to apply this effort on making it cyber secure. And you're just seeing that cybersecurity is complex, and because of all these issues, well, we are seeing the requirements which are appearing. That's my view on the subject.
All right. And can we dive into just, looking at some strategies from a manufacturing point of view of around securing legacy medical devices that may have not been designed, 20 years ago, 15, even a year ago, for modern cybersecurity threats in mind?
Yeah. So we've done a lot of work on this question. This is one of the favorite things that we like to undertake at RunSafe. So, these devices were designed in a time like, Afonso describes, before it was contemplated that you would attack an insulin pump or a pacemaker. And so they didn't design with security in mind. Now, a lot of people are still walking around with these pacemakers and with these, and using these pumps. And it's not an option to just start over for so many people and to throw out all the existing equipment. So what do we do at some amount of cost that's less than rebuilding everything? And so there are, ways of being able to look at weaving, modern protective technologies into existing infrastructure and into existing devices in a way that allows them to meet the state of the art of the attack in a way that doesn't impact the device's performance. And this digs into an interesting, collaboration that we had with Critical, working with a medical device manufacturer. So, they have a device that is selling well in Europe, and they're looking at transitioning it to the States and meeting some of the requirements in the US. And we did an analysis with them, and one of the biggest sources of vulnerabilities in embedded devices is a class of vulns called memory safety. And memory safety vulnerabilities relate to misusing legitimate code in memory in an unintended fashion that gives an attacker the ability to hijack normal operations. So that would mean that the attacker would be able to, stop, have the insulin pump work at the wrong flow rate, or have an MRI return incorrect and complete results. And so, and this class of vulnerabilities, memory safety, have been around since we've used compiled code in C and C++, and even before that, actually. So, RunSafe, we focus on getting rid of that entire class of vulns. And so when we look at, the medical device space and this customer that we collaborated with at Critical, we analyzed their software, and about 44% of the vulnerabilities in one of their devices that they're trying to transition to the US is in this class of vulnerabilities called memory safety. And that was about 1,000, just over 1,000 out of 24,000 known vulnerabilities. And are in that space. And what's really exciting is, we are able to tell this device manufacturer that with technology like RunSafe applied, they are able to mitigate that class of vulns without having to rewrite the code associated with those 1,000 vulnerabilities. And that's important also because a lot of those vulns will come from open source software where the manufacturer, even if they wanted to, can't rewrite all of that. So they're able to mitigate that set of risks without having to rewrite the software and without impacting the performance of a full 44% of the risk. And there's, they haven't been able to find another alternative that, again, allows legacy devices that much of a step function change in capability and cyber resilience in a single swoop. So, and that of the vulnerabilities in that device, 71% of the vulnerabilities that were critical, considered the most risky, were mitigated. So that allowed the device manufacturer, on a legacy device that's already out there, a lot more peace of mind, and it allowed them to focus their development efforts on, the next series of things that they need to undertake from a feature point of view instead of going back. And when we look at how to make these existing devices, this existing fleet of devices, resilient to modern challenges, this is something that customers have been resonating with, and it seems to be working well.
Great, thank you. And continuing on, with you, Doug, around securing the device functionality during the development process, how can manufacturers strike a balance between implementing a robust security measure and maintaining device functionality, which we all know is extremely important? In this case, we don't want somebody's pacemaker to go down when we're looking at development processes.
Yeah. So one of the key things is getting the security into the development process as early as possible. And sometimes that is a challenge because it's hard at times to envision that security is a value add to a device. It's typically looked at as a challenge. And so what we are able to do is actually help the product manufacturers see that actually security is a value add. Security makes the device more valuable because you're able to have features in the device that act safely and predictably, and that makes the device more reliable. That makes the device more valuable. And so if you have to restrict the feature set to a set of things that are very limited because that's all you can secure, then you actually have undermined the value of the device. So network connectivity and communication back with the doctor and the manufacturer does make these devices more secure, and it can allow the doctor advance warning on things if there's a change in the patient's heart behavior. And my mom has a pacemaker that's constantly communicating with the device's manufacturer, and so that's I'm glad that those kind of features exist. And so security really helps those things be able to happen faster. And that's what we get excited about. But what you want to be able to do is design it in early in your software development lifecycle and get it added into your your DevSecOps process. And that's, again, one of the things that we've been able to help our customers achieve, without having to rewrite code for both current and new projects. they're able to just essentially with right-click level convenience drop in our capability, and then every time they start building their software after that, it's got this memory safety mitigation just built in from the beginning, and it's done it in a way that hasn't changed the software architecture, hasn't changed reliability, and is still able to go through the the hurdles of device certification.
I have some comments, and everything that Doug said is completely true. I guess the $1 million question would be how to do that. How do we get that done? Doing security early in the cheapest way possible, or the most reliable way. First thing I would call attention to is the fact that we need always take into consideration the whole life cycle of the devices. This is something that in frequent cases, the teams and even the manufacturers are not paying enough attention. Basically, they are looking, okay, we have this device, we want it to do that, and let's do it. And with that focus, we are forgetting, for example, if we build something in a certain way, then if some vulnerability appears in the future, we'll have to respond to it. We may be liable. We may be even have to make recalls of devices. It could be extremely costly. So first and foremost, I'd say that the security measures not only are protecting the people, but are also protecting the manufacturer, in the sense that if a very serious vulnerability appears afterwards, the damage can be way worse than the cost that you'll need to pay to put this security early, like thinking about what can go wrong and just addressing the security issues at the design time. This is something that's not particular from medical devices. I mean, this is knowledge from the secure development life cycles in general. And this, and I'd say that, just piggybacking on the previous conversation about how mitigating these kinds of vulnerabilities or runtime memory vulnerabilities is important. When we have a vulnerability after a device is in the field, the kind of vulnerability we'll find makes total difference, not only for the people that are using the device, but for the manufacturers. So for example, if we have a bug there, and the bug is of the kind of denial of service, this can be a problem, but have some limited damage. But if you have a vulnerability that's remote control, which that might be even a lot worse, because that means that this device can be remote controlled by a hacker, for example. Even the kinds of effects the vulnerability might have or allow for a malicious person to exploit is completely different. And that means that maybe a recall or even an update of the software is not so, I mean, it's not so urgent to replace the software as it was, as it would be if the vulnerability was worse. So when we're talking about preventing these kinds of memory vulnerabilities, this is very important for afterwards in the end. Now, what I was saying is that everything is tied up. When you're building the software, building the device, you need to think about what will happen in the end of the life of the device. And this is also something that's already addressed in the regulations. I think one experience that I'm having is that people are focusing on the cybersecurity guidance, which is important. You need to focus on that, but you must not forget that that's on top of the quality system regulation, basically the FDA in this case, but the EU MDR also has that in another way. I can comment on that afterwards. They expect that sorry, I forgot what I was saying. But the quality system regulation is they expect that the whole the development takes all the life cycle of the device in consideration. Like, for example, for medicine, this is general for any provider of anything that's being regulated by the FDA. And then everything that appears from cybersecurity perspective must be embedded in the whole development of the system. So you need first on the manufacturers to have a complete development cycle of process, like how we devise requirements, how we test these requirements, how do we show that these requirements are being fulfilled. And then on top of these steps, we are adding cybersecurity requirements as well. And then additional security testing and things like that. And after you deploy the devices, you'll have the issues of how to update that in the future. We know vulnerabilities are there, and if they are not today, because we don't know about them, someone will discover them. This is something that is simply known. It's simply a reality of the complexity of the systems that we have. But we need to take into consideration. So maybe taking these precautions as early as possible will make the cost of making repairs and recalls, or even lowering the probability of recalls in the future, a lot lower. And this is, it's important for manufacturers to understand that, because it looks like it's just putting cybersecurity effort and maybe I won't see anything. No, you'll see return on investment now and in the future. So I think it's important to call attention to that, because regulations expect that as well.
Great, thank you so much. So diving into the importance of transparency, I think we've kind of alluded to that during the discussion so far in a roundabout way. But can we look at why is it so important to have transparency about devices' security capabilities and or limitations, and why is that critical in the medical device industry?
I do have a view, and I wanted to put it forward, a view about transparency. And this is what I say to the clients and everyone that asks me about that. First is that transparency is a right. If I'm selling a product to someone, I need to explain what it is, what it does, and I think it's something that should come along with any product that's being developed. Now, when you are building something that's complex, like a medical device, but it applies to other kinds of systems as well, there's a lot of assumptions that are being made during this development. And for example, we are using this medical device inside a building or inside a room which is secure, for example. This is a common assumption that is taken on the development. It could be a reasonable assumption or not. This is another discussion. But assuming it is, the device will only be used in a secure room, we must tell the users that, because it's not everyone that will be obvious, and maybe these assumptions should be obvious enough for most people, but there might be assumptions which are not. There are even technical assumptions, like the kind of connectivity that we are assuming this device will be able to or should use. And maybe in the future, it will appear another technology that uses a different kind of communication mechanism that brings other kinds of requirements or precautions, which we are not prepared to tackle with the security controls that are already there. So we must say to the customers, a common case, and this is an example I saw some time ago, a device that might be influenced by wireless communication that's being used around the device. This kind of testing is the kind of security testing that should be done. And for example, if you are assuming that communication will be done only over cable, for example, it's not something, I don't think it's something reasonable, but imagine it's something that we are assuming the user will do. You must say to them, if you have some kind of network that's kind of secure, or you are assuming that, you must say to them that you are. And then, because that's a matter of risk transference. It could be reasonable or not, but if you are doing it, you must say that you are doing it. And this is the gist. So then we come to the kinds of transparencies, because there's these assumptions, And then there's the inner workings of the device. This is where SBOMs will come. And SBOMs is basically the software bill of materials, is something that's being discussed and being required by the FDA. It's being required by most regulations. And in the case of the FDA, you should provide the bill of materials to the customers. Now, you guys could just tell that or think that why should I give a list of the components that are inside my device, because they can't change them, they can't do anything about them. Now, in that case, I'd say that that's a right to allow the customer to do informed decision making. Because today, and this is a truth for a lot of markets and critical systems is actually uh, that happens in everywhere, which are using open source software as basic components of the devices that we are building, the software that we are building. This is good because it's less development time. You just take something that works, you put there and use it. Now you have to say to the customers that we are using that. Why? Because like we ourselves, we are using this code, everyone in the world can use as well. It means that this code is public. It means that the vulnerabilities of this code will be known by all the hackers in the world. So we need to give a chance to the customers, if they want to know that these components can have vulnerabilities, or if they want to look for them. So I think it's a right they have. They can take this information, like for example, and I keep going back uh, to this analogy because it makes sense. Like the leaflets of medicine, there's a lot of information that people don't read or they don't understand, but they have the right to know about those stuffs. And SBOM is one part of that. And then it comes to the part of how to build SBOMs. It's not so easy. There's a lot of details about those. What the kind of information that is there. It's not only looking at the vulnerabilities of the components, but there's other information. For instance, even if I don't have vulnerabilities right now, I must want to know when the support for this component will stop. And this is something that's appearing, and you should inform the customers of this kind of information if possible, or at least from a manufacturer perspective to monitor this information. Because if a vulnerability appears there, but the support stopped, then no one will correct this vulnerability. You must have some kind of workaround, work around it, so you can replace the component in the end, so that the device can continue functioning without vulnerabilities. You must plan for those things, because depending on how you approach it, it might be impossible to do that in the future, or almost impossible, or extremely hard to do it. So this planning, listing the components, creating the SBOM, communicating the SBOM is just something that I believe it's important, it makes sense, and it just goes along with communicating to the buyers and not the patients, because in this case the responsibility is the clinic or hospital, or I don't know who will buy the medical device and look at the specs and just consider if it's necessary to look at the SBOM or not. But it's a right that we should honor.
Great, thank you. Doug, do you have any, I know RunSafe, obviously RunSafe focuses on generating SBOMs for both new and legacy devices. Did you want to give a quick overview of how easy that might be for a device manufacturer?
Yeah, and I mean, for all the points that Afonso mentioned, being able to show the composition of a device is critically important, because if you don't know what's in it, you can't credibly assess any risks. So we created a method that customers have been able to start using literally in minutes, that creates a comprehensive, perfect fidelity SBOM for embedded devices at the moment of build. And one of the challenges in building an SBOM for an embedded device is typically there's a lot of what developers would call unmanaged code. And C and C++ typically fit in the category of unmanaged, meaning there's no manifest file. What that means is you can't simply ask the piece of software, hey, what is your bill of materials? It doesn't know what that means. So you need to be able to create an SBOM even though the build architecture, the compiler structure, and the way, the combination of make files and nested make files may be impossibly complex. And if you use some of the embedded build systems like Yocto or Buildroot, the component source files that you're using, you may never store locally. So how do you know what's really going into a thing? So for unmanaged C and C++, and we created a method that has, again, literally our customers have been able to start using in minutes, that creates a perfect fidelity SBOM of all of the inputs going into your embedded device, medical device in this case, without having to change developer workflows. So this is able to just happen. The developer doesn't even know it's happening. And in the case of many of our customers in the defense space, one legacy combat aircraft in the U.S. Fleet, every time they build an SBOM for that aircraft, they've allotted 2,000 labor hours to comb through a handful of inputs. Not a handful, a mountain of inputs to coalesce the complete bill of materials. But that legacy aircraft has been able to apply our technology to make that now go from 2,000 hours to just a handful of human hours. And so that same ability to scale, that rapid creation of that SBOM, can be applied to, and our customers are looking at it in medical devices. And one of the other things that you're able to do at the instant of the creation of the SBOM is get a complete listing of, what are the known vulnerabilities in there. And that then allows you to assess, okay, now what? All right, I have, we want to be transparent, so that customers know what they're getting into, but organizations also want to have the ability to, now that I know what's in my bill of materials, I want to be able to do something about it. And so that's by being able to highlight, those vulns and highlight the ones that in the case of, for example, RunSafe, we're able to point out the memory safety vulns and show kind of a before and after picture of, without RunSafe, you've got these, again, 2,400 vulns, but when RunSafe's applied, that the exploitable number of vulns drops by 40, 50, 60, or 70%. So, and that's been something our embedded device manufacturers have been able to start doing, again, in minutes.
Great. And, as far as ensuring that devices remain secure through their entire life cycle, from development to retirement, can we just talk around how can manufacturers ensure that this happens moving forward?
I have a view about that. Basically, the way to do that is to have what we call a secure development life cycle. And some people think about that as a different kind of life cycle. But basically, as I explained before, it's a quality system. You have predefined steps, things and activities that you need to do in a certain order, and you have to accomplish certain goals in each activity. And once you plan that, and you can look for the relationship of security between each of the steps. So now in this part, we'll look at the vulnerabilities or the threat model of the device, and then we'll look for the controls necessary for this device, and then we'll implement these controls, and then we'll test these controls, and then we'll do a general vulnerability assessment of the device. Once we have a full life cycle, we can look at the steps. During the normal development, like the functional development, it will have its characteristics, and then we'll bring the security activities which make sense for each step. And doing that, you can look at the different parts of the development life cycle and find, I'd say, weaknesses of the life cycle. So if we are, I don't know, looking at or implementing the security controls at a certain step, or the development step, we can ask ourselves, okay, what we'll do if we need to replace a component in the future? How we will update the software? Is it reasonable to do in that way? Will that make it harder to update the software in the future? That could be a question asked on the architecture part, where we are defining how the modules will be built, how it will be installed, how even the hardware architecture will be built and designed. So really the only way to do that is to think about the whole process and look at all the steps, and then look at the relationships of the steps and evaluate if everything is being covered or not. Because cybersecurity knowledge it's there. We should borrow in medical devices. The technology on medical devices might be more or less new from that perspective, but the cybersecurity knowledge we can use to secure medical devices is already there. We can talk about new threats, but we should talk about new threats, not only medical devices. We're talking about new threats everywhere in all kinds of markets, systems, areas, etc. So we just need to incorporate this knowledge into the medical device life cycle, development life cycle.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Afonso. Doug, speaking of threats, obviously we understand zero-day vulnerabilities pose a high risk. So can you walk us through, how we can get ahead of that, and what we, as far as device manufacturers are concerned, how we can remedy that before they happen?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if the idea of, a 0 day in someone's pacemaker or a 0 day in a critical piece of equipment is pretty terrifying. And so this 0 day again is a vulnerability that has been present for the entire life cycle of the device, but is only now been known. And so the risk was always there, but now it's being talked about. It is now a known vulnerability, and it could be, being targeted for weaponization, or it might have already been targeted for weaponization. So it's this latent risk that's in your code. So fortunately, there are steps, that people can take to cut off that risk, even though, getting rid of 0 days has been the goal of software testing for decades. And software testing has come a long way and removed many, many bugs. But research has consistently shown, and empirical evidence clearly shows that, testing doesn't get all of the bugs. And so that is where 0 days come from. They still remain in the code, even though it's been tested, and is now deployed. So we're not completely out of options at that point. There are, again, as RunSafe being an example of a technology that is vulnerability independent, meaning our memory safety mitigation doesn't need to be told about bugs. We don't care. We assume every single aspect of a program is vulnerable, and we protect it, assuming every single aspect is vulnerable, so that when something does show up as vulnerable to our protection method, that's entirely, unimportant. We've already protected it. So, and we've been able to analyze and show our customers that, without technology like RunSafe, there are, on average, every given program has on average 280 different functions in it, and analyzing the different attack vectors in those 280 functions across the entire program, typically we find in analysis 50 to 100,000 different potential attack vectors that could be used against any individual binary, depending on what vulnerability becomes known later. And what we're able to show is that, when our methods are applied, that those number of attack vectors go from 50 to 100,000 down typically to 0, so that when that next 0 day is identified, there's nothing for the attacker to grab onto and weaponize in the now medical device, the protected medical device. So that's something that has given our customers a lot of confidence in being able to apply this, and so that they're able to say to their customers, "Hey, yes, a new vulnerability has been identified in a thing, but that's not going to cause you heartburn because we've already built protection into that. Our deployment model already assumed that was going to happen, so we've already got you protected. So that's been an exciting aspect of this for our customers.
Great, thank you, Doug. And that was actually everything that we had planned on discussing today on this webinar. Again, the webinar was Navigating FDA and EU Medical Compliance and Regulations. And we do have a question from the audience. So this is actually specifically directed to Doug and RunSafe specifically. Can RunSafe help the process of vulnerability disclosures, which is one of the FDA post-market regulations? For example, if RunSafe can prevent vulnerabilities from being exploited, will this ease the burden on the manufacturer of having to provide patches immediately?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and that's exactly what we aim to offer our customers. So, what the class of bugs that we're working with, again, are called memory safety vulnerabilities. And if you analyze all bugs in C and C++ software, what you find is that consistently memory safety bugs are the most exploitable. They're considered they on average come up with the highest severity scores. And what customers that have our technology applied are able to do is say that, yes, this absent mitigation, this particular vulnerability has a what's called a CVSS score of 10, which is the most exploitable and the most dangerous. But when RunSafe's applied, it's now down to 0 because it's not exploitable. And so that goes into triaging the response necessary for new vulnerabilities that are discovered. You're able to say the risk is mitigated. Now that people should still patch when appropriate, but we are able to do it on a pre-planned basis, not an emergency basis. Whatever your normal update cycle would be, that would be the right time to push a patch. You don't have to, drop everything, fix this, and have your customers, stop by and disrupt their lives. So, we're able to create the documentation for our customers and show them, artifacts that allow them to say, yes, this is a set of mitigated risks, and they are able to just have business as usual with whatever their pre-planned update cycle is.
Great, thank you. And we do have one more question, and it's how are cloud-connected medical devices changing cybersecurity, and what are the challenges that we see being presented?
Yeah, I can talk a little about that. Basically, any kind of medical device, you'll have to create a threat model for it. And cloud computing is basically computers which are remotely located, so the communication with these computers are over the network. So there are some basic things that you need to consider, like, for instance, these servers are exposed to the internet, and you have to provide security controls to show that hackers can't enter the system, let's say, through these servers. This may be a challenge because those cloud infrastructures can be very complex unless you can show that it is properly isolated. But as long as you use proper encryption, proper communication protocols, even consider the possibility of losing connection and things like that, it's not so hard to show that the architecture is safe, because the controls and the technologies we need to make this work secure exist. The issue here is that, for example, if a medical device is away from the cloud, then we must assume there are hackers there that will interfere with the communication. The communication can be lost. If you show that the medical device is still secure under these circumstances, and this comes from the threat model, which is something that appears in all regulations, all standards, the 81001, IEC 81001-5 -1 also requires threat modeling. It's a basic activity, as the ones I was saying before, activity during the development of a secure medical device. If you do that and show, okay, we have all controls to make this situation safe, then you can show that medical device is safe. It's not so easy because you need to consider all the possibilities. This is where a good threat model comes, and maybe a good, I wouldn't say necessarily expertise, because I do understand that even software engineers can create good threat models. The thing of a threat model is that we need to put ourselves in a perspective which is opposite from the functions. We are looking of how things may fail, and then we try to address and create controls that will prevent things, either prevent them from failing, or if that is not possible, then to fail safely, fail in a way that's not causing harm to anyone. This is doable. It's not easy, not straightforward, and depends a lot on the circumstances, on the medical device and what it's doing, but it's possible. It's not something out of this world. We do that every time.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, Doug and Afonso, I appreciate your time today. And to the audience, I hope you enjoyed our conversation. We will be sending the recording out after the event. As well, it will be on runsafesecurity.com and on our LinkedIn. So appreciate both of your time today. And I know we will also have a follow-up handout that we will be sending everyone as well. So thank you both.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It was very glad to share the experience with Doug, with you, Stacy. It's really good experience.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Afonso. Thank you.